there. Welcome. This is Pod and Deliver, and today we have a guest, Crissel Rodriguez. Crissel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Great. You know, I don't. This is the first time you met my brother Ruben. We did a little introductions before the podcast, and I'm not sure if you had a chance to see our podcast. I'm sure you watched every single episode of our podcast, but no, I know I sent one to you, and you know what? Can you do me a favor, Crissel? Can you let the audience know your title and what you do in education?
Sure. So I'm the director of real world learning at Vinci schools. And so I'm technically a school administrator, but I would say I'm kind of like more like a punk rock school administrator in the sense that I'm a school administrator that has been tasked to really think about developing a real world learning program that encompasses helping students find their interests, identify their passions, figure out how those things relate to careers. I'm also tasked with supporting our teachers that are part of our career, technical, and education pathways. So at Da Vinci, we have about 9 different CTE pathways that include like entrepreneurship, architecture, biomedical engineering, all kinds of pathways. So students, I think, predominantly in their sophomore year or junior year, get to decide what pathway makes sense to them. So a lot of elective courses around that. And I think one of the things that really makes Da Vinci unique is that we have a lot of industry partners that we work with that support with helping teachers in like reviewing their curriculum and seeing how that aligns with industry, in sometimes giving students a project that relates to some of the things that they're dealing with in the real world. So part of my job is also to seek out those industries or those folks who are really interested in like youth development and like engaging in the classroom. So I feel like in that sense, this is kind of like a new trajectory that I hope that other schools like embody. And so I think it's really innovative. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It seems like you have a lot on your plate. I mean, right now I'm like, you kept sharing, oh my goodness, you seem very busy. Your calendar must be pretty nonstop during the week, right? Or during the month.
Yes.
Ruben and I just read this book, Learning to Lead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ruben.
Yeah, exactly. And you said, Crissel, real world learning. Right. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it is. I read this book for the first time, Crissel, this last week. And I'm not sure if you had a chat, if you read in the past or when you were at New Village. And I guess I should share with the audience, Crissel, we have a common history a little bit. You worked for Soledad Enrichment Action. And then you went on to work for, and the education, I know you had other jobs, and then you went to, is it Girls New Village?
New Village Girls Academy, correct?
That's right.
And then you're at Da Vinci doing a lot of great work there. But a lot of the things that you learned at New Village, did you take that on to your new job? I mean, because it sounds like, as I read the book, it sounds like a lot of things that you're doing is from the, that you learned maybe back then. Is that correct?
Yes. So I guess I would like to give a little bit of context of the founding of New Village and why that school is so special and unique. So it was founded in 2006 with the intent of supporting young girls who were pregnant or parenting who predominantly resided in the city of LA. So a lot of schools, traditional schools, I would say, sometimes lack a lot of supports when specifically girls are kind of going through that process of being pregnant and having a schedule that accommodates them and like all the things that come with motherhood. So New Village was really created to develop a system where those girls could, go ahead and graduate. And there was a lot of wraparound supports as well around the school. And then as the pregnancy rates in LA County decreased pretty significantly, then the school actually became a school for any girl who wanted to be in a small environment. There was a lot of social emotional learning that was done because, a lot of students had a lot of traumatic experiences or maybe life challenges that propelled them to seek out a program like New Village. And I would say, I'm not sure when New Village Girls Academy became a big picture school, but Big Picture is a network of different schools internationally that are really thinking about ways in which to embed real world learning, are thinking about how to really support students who come from under-resourced communities, help them develop their network, help them identify what their strengths are, really celebrating them as who they are, and like having a space in the school to acknowledge and celebrate that resilience that they have demonstrated. So at New Village, I was fortunate enough to be the internship coordinator for, I want to say, 2 years. I think one of the unique things about any big picture school really is that there's like a really strong advisory structure where students are tasked every semester to develop a research question that relates to their interests. So some of the research questions that students had were, for example, how to support a child when they've gone through a traumatic experience. So, you know, students really wanted to explore mental health. Students thinking about how can I, as a young person, help in changing the or supporting things around climate change. So I would say a lot of the questions that students framed were around, you know, issues that pertain to them, things that they saw in their neighborhoods or around their environment. Some of them were about like starting a business. A lot of our students really being, you know, like exploring entrepreneurship. So when students developed a question, then it was kind of my role and the role of the advisors to figure out where can students possibly get insights into careers that align with this interest. So that was kind of my job, is like supporting every single student in that
What's the population? How many kids were you working with?
Yeah.
Crissel, you asked a question earlier, and the question was when New Village became a big picture school.
Yes.
I think I can answer that.
Oh, go ahead.
Because I used to work there. In 2010, it became a big picture school. And I just wanted to say the challenge that you faced there when you worked there is very unique, because you're talking about a lot of innovative ideas. This idea of internship and project-based learning and things in that community, because you mentioned it's a high rate of pregnancies. So I think people could really appreciate, I appreciate that notion, because I worked there and I could see the difficulties and challenges there. But kudos to you that you did that, and you're doing something similar now, right, with Vinci.
Yes.
So when you worked there, was there a particular internship? So by the way, in case anybody missed it, as Jake indicated, we reviewed Leaving to Learn, and we'll bring out that video later this week. But the idea of sending kids out. So I don't know if a lot of students, so Jake, we haven't really talked about big picture on this channel before, and I don't think people are really grasping what this means. That literally means sending students out of the school. Goodbye. You're not in class today. Sometimes up to 3 times a week, typically twice. And they're just at an internship. They're at a business. They're at an office. They're building real world skills. Was there a particular internship, Crissel, that you saw that you thought was really successful while at New Village?
Yes. I mean, I think when I was seeking out partners, for me, it was always important to ensure that we had a really strong mentor, someone who was really committed to supporting a young person's, you know, career trajectory, like really willing to share their network with them. And so we had so many really amazing mentors through that program. But I would say one of the most impactful internships in my eyes were, there was a organization that was referred to me called Relampago Wheelery. And the mentor there, he's the business owner, he really is trying to get the community to really think about transportation in different ways. So I think when I spoke with him, he mentioned to me, I think he was like almost in his 40s, had never owned a car in his life, and was really all about helping youth and community members understand that a lot of the times the development of cities has always been like thinking about cars and parking and transportation in that way. But he said, can we like start envisioning a city that is run by bicycles? So his nonprofit was really trying to get kids or young folks to learn how to build bicycles for different community members. So you think about your food vendor, for example, who needs to go from one location to another. At his nonprofit, they would support that person. And students were welding, they were building a bike. And so if you think about a 16-year-old, right, using welding machinery, it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
But it was so empowering to see our students, particularly girls, taking on trades, which is also very unconventional for women to explore. So for me, like seeing the footage, pictures of them, seeing them in live in action, it was amazing.
It's very empowering, as you mentioned. New Village is a school for girls, and it's also innovative. And maybe 10 years ago when it started, when I walked in, it might have felt kind of eccentric, but and we'll go into details later this week when reviewing the book. But in a way, it's progressive, and you are the times have basically caught up to internship learning and learning through internships, because some of the data indicates that in 8 years from now, 80% of the jobs don't even exist today.
That's right.
That will exist in maybe 8 to 10 years from now. So this is important that some of the learning isn't just in a textbook, but is being applied in the real world. So that's why I like that real world learning.
Can I ask something though? Because Crissel, you know me from, I don't think I mentioned this either, that we go back some history here. I believe your social studies teacher, one of your social studies.
U.S. government teacher.
U.S. government. When I was a young child, when I was a young youngster, and you were, and I think the audience would probably understand that she was one of the top students, right? But that being said, you know what? As you're sharing what you're sharing, Crissel, I'm thinking about my colleagues over the years. How would they handle this? I know your background. We had an academy structure where there was some internships and mentorships, but this seems a lot more to. There just seems like there's more to this. What's the buy-in at these schools? I mean, I know Vinci and at New Village, and how do they, deal with this? Were they happy to do this? Were they part of some of these mentorships? How did that work?
So I think by the time I got to New Village, it was already established that internships were just part of what we did. And I think we saw a lot of value in it, because after, I would say after 8 or 10 weeks of internship, then students actually get and delve into their research question in preparation for what we call exhibitions, which are basically presentations of learning. And, every exhibition, students explored their question in more depth. They tied in different content areas, whether that be science, social studies, and they also spoke about their internship experience. And I would say it was always very reaffirming to see students voice like my internship really changed the way that I thought about fashion or design, or it really made me think about the ways in which we can address homelessness. So for me, it was always a reaffirming experience. Like internships are very important. And at Da Vinci, I would say right now, at least in the workforce, I do see that there has been more of I think there's more conversations around students going directly from high school to work and what that looks like. And so I think at Da Vinci, even though internships have been something that's also always been practiced and has been celebrated, there's less celebration around apprenticeships, which I think is interesting. And so I think part of my work now consists of helping maybe teachers, community members, family members, guardians see that there's also value in supporting those students who want to pursue an apprenticeship program, which I think is like a internship on steroids, which consists of students like developing work experience, doing coursework during the time that they're doing this apprenticeship that can lead directly to like a median or high skilled profession.
Now, Crissel, you mentioned exhibitions as being an exploration or demonstration of the research question, and also the internship and what that entailed. And before I asked you an effective one that you saw, I know there are probably several, but you mentioned when we were off camera or we were off the video, something about manifesting. You wanted to manifest your background. I just wanted to, I don't, what do you mean by that? What did you
There's a high vocabulary, Ruben.
So you might see my Zoom background. I would love for this to be my house because I would love to live in the middle of an old forest up north. But unfortunately, this is not how my house looks like. But I often think about the ways in which like we can manifest the future that we envision for ourselves. And I think being in this role is really about allowing students to have a space in the classroom to dream about that. There was actually an article that I came across through Getting Smart, which I totally recommend. I mean, a lot of great articles coming out of that organization. And they were talking about pinning the tail on the donkey, right? That game that we play at parties. And comparing that to the educational process that I would say a lot of students, even now, currently face, which is you have to be blindfolded, right, through this game. And you're given the tail of the donkey, you're kind of spun around, and then you're kind of being thrown into like, okay, now pin the tail on the donkey. And I feel like some students, right, as they're navigating their courses or navigating the educational system, oftentimes they're kind of blind to the possibilities of what's possible. So, and then we kind of spin them around, show them different pathways, maybe have guest speakers come in, and then expose them to careers as best as we can. But then we're asking them, okay, now you make decisions. And I feel like for a 16-year-old, 18-year-old, even some adults that are kind of looking for careers now, it can be a really scary process. So I think there is a lot of work that I do in terms of creating life design curriculum where students start thinking about those questions early on, like what are my strengths? What are the things that I lean into? How does this compare to or relate to the careers that exist outside in the real world? And, you know, as Ruben, you mentioned, there are jobs that are going to be developed in the next 10, 20 years. And so how do we prepare students for that? So I think part of it is also helping students learn how to like manifest their future for themselves. Yeah.
Excellent. And I do see the woods in your future. So,
thank you.
An exhibition that you saw that stands out to you?
Yes, so many. I wish I could just like, I think that we need a whole podcast to talk about all the great exhibitions.
Hey, we may bring you back, just so you know.
And I'm asking you this too, Crissel, because it gives me a chance to share one as well. But anyway, is there one that stands out, or maybe that's unfair?
Well, there's one that comes to mind, and this was a student that was placed in the foster care system and who we were supporting. And she really was interested in poetry, really interested in acting. And so we were able to find her an internship where she was mentored by an actor in the local community theater. So this mentor really helped her develop a script. And so I think through the process of her internship, we kind of didn't really know what she was doing too much. So like we would have check-ins with her and she said, yeah, my internship's going great. But then when it came time for the exhibition, I think for the most part, students often lead with like presentations of learning need to be like an official presentation, a slide deck, maybe a couple videos. But this particular student was like, no, I don't want my exhibition to be a slide deck. I actually want you all to go to a play that I wrote. And so we all went to the local theater and I wasn't aware of what the play was going to be about. And it ended up being her story of how she ended up in the foster care system. And it was incredibly moving, jarring. She really did such a great job of showing the different challenges that she went through as she was trying to reunite with her family. She talked a lot about the experiences that kind of led her from being, to being separated from her home. And we all kind of, I would say like almost everyone that was there, with the exception, I think of like one man that was there, I think we all shed a tear because it was just so incredibly moving. And we were all just so proud of her because, we knew that her story really was something that I think she just did a phenomenal job of sharing her story. But then also, I think we were all moved enough to like figure out, okay, well, the student just presented us with this really vulnerable story. Like, how is it that she now envisions being an advocate for others that are in the foster care system? And her play kind of ended in that way. Like, I plan to be an advocate for those other youth who are in that same situation. So I would say for me, that was like a really powerful exhibition.
I'm so glad you shared that story because it perfectly illustrates the power of student participation in the real world. Just because you know the Common Core standards, what does that mean? And how internships and exhibitions can show really the power of real world learning and so that was great. I do want to say, Jake, I know you're part of
I was
this
going to say,
podcast.
can you top that story, Ruben?
No. So I'll just be quiet.
No, you can share yours. No, let's hear yours, Ruben.
I just want to say that just as you're sharing, I thought of another one who was an actress, a girl who acted and loved that, and she gave a great thing. But I won't talk about that one because this other one was a girl who was interested in health and interned at a hospital. And I gotta say, as somebody who has seen teachers, so she gave her exhibition and it was on cells and bio and just that world, and she just gave a lesson. It was as sophisticated a lesson as any teacher as I've seen. I was watching this junior in high school articulate cells and reproduction just as good as any teacher as I've seen do it. And I thought, this is a semester of listening to experts at our hospital and talking and being mentored. And I thought, this is how it's done. And you and I know, Crissel, that sometimes they're not as perfect as those, but that's what school's about. We meet students at their level. So,
yes, and then also asking them to rise above. One of the things that kind of came to mind, Ruben, as you're talking is I actually visit another big picture school. It's a STEM Odyssey and it's in Paramount. And I noticed that the staff there would refer to their students as scholars, which I thought was really interesting. So when I came back to New Village, I started doing that. I started to refer to them as scholars. And some students would push back and they would say, I'm not a scholar. And I said, I think that you are. And so it's interesting when at the end of the semester, there was one particular student who kept rejecting that term. And then when she graduated, she said, you know what, miss, I am a scholar. And I said, that's right, you are a scholar.
They rise to the, that expectation, right? Hey, this is what you want. Oh, I'm going to get there. That's so, you mentioned mentors, and I'm thinking about your life because, you go to LinkedIn and you just learn so much about people, right? And I know a little bit about you because, our common history and so forth. But Crissel, can you share with our audience that person who's mentored you? Because before you answer that, actually, before you share who's mentored you throughout your experience in education, how about students? Do you have the opportunity to mentor kids yourself? Because in your position, have you been able to have a chance to do that?
Yes. So actually, like early on in college, I learned like that it was important to have two mentors in your life: a mentor who is a lot older than you, and then a mentor who is half your age, which I thought was really interesting. And I think there's definitely value in that. Because someone who's older, really, they're wise, right? They have gone through a lot of experiences, but then someone who is younger than you is seeing the world through a different lens. So I think I've been fortunate enough that throughout my experience in education, I've always had not like one longstanding mentor, but just folks that have really influenced, for me, the way that I see education. And I would say one of those people that kind of stands out in my mind is Robert Sortino, who was the principal at Soledad Enrichment Action. And when I started working with him, he was kind of tasked to reform the school and embed project-based learning into an alternative school setting that was giving students packet work which in my eyes was not education. And I think a lot of us kind of realized that. So I think he really taught me that in leadership positions, you need to lead with vulnerability. You need to learn how to, work sometimes in situations where there is a lot of resistance to like maybe some of these innovative ideas that you need to recognize people's fears, especially in a school where, I would say at Soledad Enrichment Action, I think a lot of teachers had been doing things in a certain way for a long time. And there was a lot of fear of how to transition to being a school that forced you to build relationships with students, that forced you to help students in like a more robust kind of way. But he did it with a lot of grace, I would say, really leaning into his own experiences. And so for me, like, I think that really shaped the way that I thought about education and the way that you can lead change. And in terms of my young mentors, I think like my students have been my mentors that have like challenged me. And sometimes when you're challenged by a student, it can definitely be uncomfortable. So there were times where I was like, dang, I really messed up, or I didn't see this, or I could have done this better. And the fact that my students kind of pointed that out to me, I think was like a valuable mentorship experience for me.
That's maturity, because not all adults or even people in education could do that. Like, wait, now, why are you sharing that with me? But to take it in and go, wow, I could learn from this. So valuable, and you've learned that so early. So that's so wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I know Robbie too, and yeah, he's a wise person. We both share Saya and New Village.
Yes, we do.
Troopers.
So, yeah. Saya for me was many years ago, but
Same here.
the question, I guess one question I have for you, one last question for you, Crissel, is it catching on, this project-based learning, exhibition, internship? Have you seen it in other schools? Is it growing, or is it just staying in one or a few places? What have you seen?
So I think that I think it's definitely growing. I do see that there is a lot more interest, like at Da Vinci schools, for example. We do have a lot of schools from around the country and even internationally that are coming to like learn about our model and figuring out how to embed project-based learning. How do you shift from standards to competencies? How do you develop a real-world learning program to get students to explore careers outside of school? So I think in the last year alone, I was able to, for example, give a tour to folks from Kazakhstan. I'm like, so like even right now, if you ask me to like point it out on a map, I'm like, I know it's kind of in this area, right? But I feel like even in the most remote parts of the world, like these ideas are catching on. So I think that's really just kind of speaks to how like we're all kind of trying to think about education in innovative ways, especially in light of the pandemic, which we're still experiencing. But I think project-based learning is definitely a great start.
That's great. And for me, one last question I'd like to ask you, Crissel. That's exciting that just even your experiences that you've had. I'm just imagining like, wow, they're different than my experiences, and I'm so glad you're having them. And you're at Da Vinci right now. And how about yourself regarding the next few years? Where do you see yourself? Are you still there at Da Vinci, or do you feel like there's some area that you want to really kind of accomplish in education, or you want to see something different? Because it looks like the Da Vinci, and correct me if I'm wrong, the students at Da Vinci is a different group of kids that you worked with at New Village, right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So I think the demographics at Da Vinci are really interesting. We have a lot of ethnic diversity, and I would say 50% of our students receive free and reduced lunch, and then 50% of our students are kind of in like the higher income strata. So definitely a different type of student body. And I would say in terms of like where I see myself in the next 10 years, I would really love to support schools that are in like extremely under-resourced communities to try and develop this, because I feel like, growing up in Southeast LA, our neighborhoods really like what you see around. And even now that I've kind of, driven around there, it's like liquor stores, restaurants, etc. But like how do you really support those students in like developing their social capital? How do you help students envisioning that they are too able to consider these careers and like these emerging fields? So I think I would love to at some point be a consultant. So I don't know if that would be like a full-time job or maybe, you know, doing that on the side, but definitely want to support those educators who are wanting to bring that type of change to their schools.
Terrific. I know we could definitely use you in the communities, and I've been in those communities that you're sharing for the last since SEA, well, even SEA, right? So the last 30 years, and I'm telling you, and I know you could understand this, that you get so much out of it. I mean, even see people like yourself coming out of that community and doing so much and giving back, and so I'm excited about that, and I see you doing that. So
thank you so much.
Ruben, do we have anything else for Crissel this evening?
I just want to manifest something now.
Oh,
Thank
wow.
you, Ruben.
Just because you did it and it's inspiring me. But
very good.
But I'll think of something soon, but it's going to be positive.
Awesome.
Nothing negative, nothing tragic befalling my brother Jacob.
Hey, come on now.
Oh no.
We really do get along, Crissel. We love each other.
Yeah, I can see that.
Wow.
No, I would just want to thank you, Crissel, for joining us. It's so cool to talk to somebody. Actually, we've had one other person from New Village. Jesus Roman was with us last year. So,
Mr. Roman.
Oh,
yes,
Yeah.
he's the man. So
incredible.
So thank you for joining us.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Very good. Well, with that, we want to thank you all for listening in, and we'll catch you next time at Pod Deliver. Bye-bye.